Bradford, did you see that awesome new Line 6 video they posted yesterday, going through all the new Agoura amp models?
They posted a whole video. I know I saw a 1 minute video going.
It's 60 seconds long.
Oh, that was what you were talking about.
Yes, that's it. So they basically filmed the Helix Stadium and went through. You saw the focus zone view of all the amps. So, but they didn't actually list what they were. So in this video, we're going to tell you all the new amps.
We're going to talk for 15 minutes about a 1 minute video.
Yes. Well, I have studied that 1 minute video in great detail.
So a little background, if you're watching this, you may not know who we are. Brian and I we have another channel called Worship Tutorials. We started making Helix patches. Subscribe to both, this one and that one. We started making Helix patches for worship players, and it actually became a thing. And so we were invited to the event. We actually got to be there the day it was announced. Super huge honor. And we got to play it for like 30 minutes, Brian.
Yep. About. Yeah.
Yeah.
You and me and Doug Doppler in the same room.
Yes.
Playing the Helix Stadium XL. So there are 22 Agoura amp models. All of the existing Helix HX amp models will also be in Stadium, but their new modeling engine is called Agoura. It is a more accurate modeling engine that takes into account much more of the circuitry of the amp. These are the higher quality, more accurate amp models. The engine that runs them is called Agoura. And there are 22 amp models at launch. There are 16 electric guitar amp models and 6 bass amp models, but there's a caveat there.
I was about to say.
Stay tuned to the end, because 2 of those bass models are actually like world-class amp guitar models. There are 40 channels modeled. So we'll talk about what that means. So it's a pretty good amount of Agoura amps coming at launch. So let's jump in. Where do you want to start, Bradford? Do you want to start clean and go to dirty, or do you want to go the other way around?
Yeah. I think
clean.
We care more about that. Yeah, let's start clean.
There are a handful of Fender amp models included. I got the list right here. There is the US Lux Black. That's the deluxe reverb. Both the normal and vibrato channels. So the deluxe is one of the amps we actually got to play while we were there. We can talk about that in a bit. There is the US Princess 76. Guess what that is?
Princeton.
That's a Princeton. So it's 76. I assume that's the 70s Princeton.
Silver face, probably. Yeah.
There are 2 tweeds. There's the 5-watt tweed, which is based on the Fender Champ. That one, if you look at the image that they filmed, has a low and a high input option. And I was counting up these channel counts, and I have determined, Bradford, that high and low input options do not count as channels. That's one channel with 2 input options. Because there are a few amps that have, there are a few amps that they're doing Agoura amp models that have high and low inputs, and if you count each of those inputs as a channel, it puts the channel count above.
Yeah.
So,
but it makes sense, because it's no different. It's really just something on the front end of the circuit that knocks off a little of the incoming signal, anyways. Yeah. So that's a cool feature, because you get more headroom. Like I think of the Matchless HC30, for example, that EF86 channel. It's hot. So even though I'm running lower output pickups, I still plug into whatever the second one is, and it knocks down some input, and it kind of makes that channel a lot more usable for my uses. Anyways, This isn't about Agoura. This is about amps in general.
So that's the Tweed Champ, and then there is the US Tweed Man, which is the Fender Bassman. The Tweed Bassman, I assume it's probably a vintage. It would be from the late 50s, because early 60s they changed to brown and then blonde and then eventually black panel. So the Bassman has a normal, bright, and jump. So you get 3 channels in that one amp model. And then there's the US Double, which is the US Double Black. That's the twin. You get the vibrato and the normal channel, and that's like a blackface twin. A lot of Fender represented right out the gate.
I'd say you get a wide swath of Fender tones right there. I mean, those are the big hitters for Fender. Like a Vibrolux, we have one in the studio. It sounds great. It sounds great, but we're not hurting for Fender cleans by any means.
I would have loved to see that super reverb that they did recently for Helix. come to Agoura. Another big one for us is the SX TB30cc. This is a Vox AC30 top boost. It makes me wonder which Vox AC30 they're modeling here. I think you could maybe make the argument that this is not one of the two AC30s in Helix, because those have different names. And the reason I say that is the CC on it, because they had like a custom classic line. I wonder if it's one of those. But this one has the normal and the top boost channels modeled in the same amp model, and we played it, and it sounded really, really good.
I did.
Really, very good. They've got the Hu Watt 100, which is the high watt DR 103, normal and bright channels on that. We got a couple Marshalls. We got the Plexi, which is the 100 watt super lead, 1959 model, normal, bright, and jumped. We've got the 2203 MV, which is the 100 watt JCM 800. This one though is interesting because it has the high and low input. This is the other amp that we tried when we played it, and it has the high and low input, so it counts as one channel. But if you remember switching to low, it's super clean, and it's that way on the Helix too. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a 2-channel amp, but doesn't count as 2 channels.
Yeah, you get me a little bit more headroom. Yeah.
You got the Soldano SLO 100, and that has the clean and overdrive channel in it. I'm excited to try that one out. I've been into the SLO 100 lately, Bradford.
Yeah.
Really into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the cleans on those, I think people see that amp and they just assume heavy, real dirty. But the cleans on that, I mean, John Mayer used one.
The remaining 6 guitar amp models are actually single channels of, like, multiples of single channels of different amps. And they're higher gain. So Eric told us that some amps, and he said this in interviews, there are certain amps where it's just too much for them to model all the channels in a single amp. Because the amps are more complicated. So you've got the Rev Generator 120, and there's a red and the purple channel modeled separately. You've got the EV Panama Red, which is the EVH 5153, not 51, 51503. You got the red and the blue channels. Got red and blue. And then you've got the German Extra red and blue, and that's the Bogner Ecstasy. Love it. The Ecstasy was awesome when they released it sort of not long ago for Helix.
That was the same firmware as the Super, so.
It was, yeah. Let's move on to bass. Now, we're not bass players, so we don't cover much bass, but there's 2 things that are very interesting in the bass. So there's the Agoura 751, that's Aguilar DB 751. There's the Mandarin 200 plus 200, Orange 8200 Mark III. That has 2 channels. There are 2 Ampeg bass amps, and Yamaha, who owns Line 6, also owns Ampeg, so they have access to everything Ampeg there. So there's the SVT 50th anniversary. That has 5 channels modeled in it, by the way.
That's gnarly.
That's kind of crazy. And then there's the Portaflex, the B15 NF 66 is the model. So the 2 interesting things in the amp world. One exists in the Helix.
We already have it.
Yeah, it's the US Drip bass. That is a Fender Silverface Bassman. You get 3 channels. You get, I assume, normal bass and jumped. They didn't like cycle through the 3 channels in the video, but like those are the 3 channels on a drip face, Silverface drip edge. That's what I'm looking for, drip edge Bassman.
Yeah.
That's in the bass guitar like section. Killer guitar amp though.
Yeah. And it if you're looking for more Marshall sounds, don't forget that like Marshalls were like based on Bassmans because they couldn't get American amps in England and whole nother thing. But if you're like wishing, like, don't forget that you have that kind of like flavor if you're looking for like more Marshall-y. But speaking of Marshall,
speaking of Bradford, so they're doing this video, and I see the words Brit Mega Bass on the bass thing, and it looks like a Plexi, looks like a Marshall Plexi, and sure enough, if you look, it's sort of out of focus in the frame, and on the screen it said, sure enough, Marshall Super Bass in parentheses 1992, I think It's blurry, but I made it out. I think that means that it's a Marshall 100-watt super bass from 1992, and there were 3 channels: normal, bright, and jumped. Tom Bukovac says that's the best Marshall that was ever made. So that's a gem, and it doesn't exist in the Helix even. That's brand new.
That's pretty. That's cool. And what that does for guitar players, that brings up our count. We mentioned this at the beginning. Brings our count of guitar amps actually to 18, not just 16. So pretty cool.
And both of those bass guitar amps have 3 channels each, so it's 6 more channels for guitar amps. Yeah, I think that's I think that's flying under the radar. There's a super bass in this thing. It's just in the bass category.
Yeah, I already saw like
absolute
a post
legend guitar amp. Yeah.
In one of the Helix groups, and somebody went and listed all the amps.
Yeah.
And they actually listed the Silverface Bassman.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if I'd see them list the Mega Bass. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to leave that one alone because I'm not going to be Oscar Nunez in the office. Actually.
So all told, 22 new amp models, 16 electric guitar, 6 bass guitar, but you could say 2 of those are also electric guitar. Let's talk about what are the holes.
Yeah.
They've covered a lot, but there are some holes still. What are they?
Yeah. I mean,
what do you think that they should do next, Bradford?
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about the list, I mentioned like we have like any Fender flavor is like covered at this point.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it'd be nice to see like other clean type of amps that aren't Fender. I'm a little bummed at the fact that as you and I both are like a fan of the Voxy chimey thing. I'm bummed to see only like one directly in that realm. I mean, you're not without options, but it'd be nice to see the matchless,
the C30,
like in one amp, the same way. Yeah, the C30. I didn't even say that yet, have I?
Well, the Line 6 has a Chieftain. I mean, we've seen it. We pointed at it and said, we pointed at it and said, Eric and Ben, is that not a matchless Chieftain? They were like, oh, yeah. In Marshall territory, there are technically 2 Marshall guitar amps. And I see the JTM 45 as a whole that I'm sure they'll fill quickly. Bradford and I are not high gain players, but there's a brand of guitar amp that is sort of a staple that is not here represented, and that is Mesa Boogie.
Ah, yes.
And I know I know that boogies and rectifiers and stuff are the sound for so many different players.
Currently in the Helix, as like the OG Helix as they're calling it, it's really just 2 anyways. It's the Lone Star and it's Mark IV. It's a Mesa Boogie Mark IV.
There's a dual rec.
In a dual rec. Sorry, I was looking at. So you have some stuff. I mean, like we said earlier, it seems like they're making an effort to bring just about everything over. So I'm assuming we'll see that. Yeah. Another hole, and I don't even know if I say a hole. It's more intriguing. I wonder what this'll look like. We got all these like Catalyst amps that Line 6 like created. So with Stadium and with the Catalyst models, I'm wondering if like those will change at all, or if they'll just drop them in. Like, because I would assume they're coming as well. You know, there's no reason for us to not get those.
Yeah.
Are they already as like efficient as they're going to be? Is that going to become Agoura? I don't know. So, anyways, holes. We're just having fun speculating
And you brought up one other amp type that's not here, and that's a Dumble style amp. And it seems like in the modeling world lately, Dumble type models have been more and more popular with the release of the Enigmatic, and like lots of companies are doing that, and they haven't given us one yet, although I'm sure they will.
Some of you are probably already screaming at your screen, wondering, when are we going to hear it? Stop talking. No play. Yeah. People are so ticked at us. Well, we can't control that.
We should have said it up front. Line 6 did not include specific playing samples.
Probably should have said that. We were asked to not, like, we can't, even no photos, no audio samples, no video, nothing. So we got to go into the studio. We could talk about it. We got to go into their studio, and they actually had a OG Helix and a Stadium set up on a switcher, and your guitar was plugged into the switcher so you could go back and forth. They had a handful of patches set up for us. They had like 3, I think, and you could do whatever you wanted with them. But they had some stuff ready to go. The first thing we played was the Lux Black, so like the Deluxe Reverb. So they had on the OG Helix, they had the like HX Deluxe Reverb pulled up, and then in the Stadium they had a like block to switch between the same thing, the Helix, the HX model of the Deluxe Reverb, and then the Agoura model of the Deluxe Reverb. So we got to hear it 3 different ways, and without trying to like sound like fanboys and hype stuff up and all of that, to our ears, all 3 did in fact sound different. Minuscule
this
amounts.
was like about a month ago too.
Yeah.
So,
but we talked about
4
this
weeks ago.
Yeah, and I mean we did talk about this in our other video a little bit, but this is more for like context here. I remember thinking that as you went from the OG Helix with the Deluxe Reverb to the Stadium with the Deluxe Reverb, and then playing the Agoura version of the Deluxe Reverb, they got progressively like more hi-fi, like more high def. It's like it's tough for a company to like want to issue something new and then like make their old product like not like their old product doesn't sound as good as a new product. I'm sure that's a tough spot to be in. But they each sounded different. Even the HX model inside a Stadium sounded a little bit different. They were set up identical. Now they couldn't be set up identical like value for value for like the Agoura and the HX within the Stadium. That couldn't be done because the parameters and like the ratios and all are a little different. But still got to experience things that way. And there was just something about it. They were a little richer, more high def. And it's very promising. Very promising. I think that's the best way to say it. It's very promising for when we get to like have more hands-on time with our own guitars in our own like environments, playing things and setting things up exactly as we get to and want to normally, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of, I mean, I've read a lot of commentary on the internet about whether it's in forums or groups. Like, they sounded like deluxe reverbs. Like, they all sounded like deluxe reverbs.
Absolutely.
And the AC30, they all sound like AC30s. The Agoura,
because we got to try that too.
Yeah, the Agoura models just, a lot of it was feel, I thought. Like, it just felt different under your fingers, which is not something, even in a YouTube demo, you're not going to hear it as much as you experience it when playing. They just sounded and felt better. And they didn't sound, and when you say different, they're not like different amp. They don't feel like a different amp. It's the same thing. It's just, we often say things like it's like going from 1080 to 4K or something like that. You know, it's the same image, it's just higher resolution.
Just because Stadium sounded better didn't mean OG Helix sounded worse, Brian.
Thank you. One thing that we did get to play with that I want to talk about briefly, Bradford, is the hype knob. Every Agoura amp model has a hype knob, and I think this is one of the coolest features that Line 6 is doing. And if you listen to Eric talk about it...
almost one of the dumbest, but that's why it's so great. They named it hype.
It's funny. So when Eric talks about it, he does say that, okay, this takes your 100% accurate as they can model it and makes it less accurate, which is funny to me, but more polished, more like the tone you might hear on an album using that amp. After some EQ and compression and, you know, maybe some saturation.
Mastering, all that stuff.
Yeah. And so it's hard to describe. So I played with the hype knob on all 3 of those amp models. And Eric has said this, and I thought it was true. It does different things to every amp model. It's not a single, it's not like, oh, you turn this and it adds 2K and it compresses it this on every amp. No, it's specific to each amp model, and there isn't any, like, Line 6 to my knowledge hasn't released anything saying this is exactly what it's doing. It just kind of made it sound and feel more polished.
So I was so stoked to play the thing, and what I spent more time on was like, you know, at worship tutorials, we're really big in big reverbs and for stuff like that. And so I was wanting to hear all the effects because our understanding and what we actually talked about is that like the preamps, the input jacks, the interfacing, the audio or the analog digital conversion, all this stuff that goes into making sound happen.
Components, yeah.
Yeah, they're different because it's a different unit. Things are done more efficiently, and all this stuff. Yep. There's more headroom. All of this is like leading to things sounding better, even if they didn't change a single thing, like software-wise. Right.
The modeling, yeah.
I was more focused on listening to effects and putting like the prize drive in front of the AC30 with a massive dynamic hall. I wanted to hear that, and I thought that sounded great. Yeah,
it did.
Yeah, I didn't touch the hype knob, but I remember them talking about it, and the idea is quite hilarious to me.
I'll say, like, having captured so many amps.
Yeah.
In my head, the first time I plugged in a Marshall 100-watt Plexi, I had an idea of what it would sound like, and I was probably thinking like Led Zeppelin or something. And it's not really always what it sounds like. What you think an amp sounds like, based on recordings of it that you've heard, is not what the amp actually sounds like. So the hype knob gets you, like, engineers and mastering and mixing and all this, they've done stuff to that recording, to that amp, to make it sound different. And the hype knob kind of replicates that. But having a single knob that just kind of idealizes all that is a pretty cool approach. So anyway, Line 6, you guys, this is like a masterclass in marketing that they're doing, because it's like, no one's even heard this thing yet, and like pre-orders are selling out.
I think companies like music stores are like shutting down pre-orders because they're just not sure they can have enough by launch. Yeah. So, hey, if you have another topic that you'd like us to pontificate on for 15 minutes after a 1-minute video we watched, let us know down below, because there's going to be some of you are screaming.
That for you, Bradford.
Some of you are going to be screaming and thinking this video is so dumb, but I'm going to tell you something. This is content we would watch, and we know others want to watch it too.
That's exactly right.
Yes, so that's why we're making it, because we have fun making it, and we know people enjoy watching it. So let us know if there's something else, and as we get closer, we're hoping to be able to make some content with an actual unit. We're hoping that happens. So yeah, subscribe if you haven't. Also, by the way.
Yes. Please and thank you.
Yeah.
We'll see you in the next one.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.